Stranded on a hostile planet. First document. Zara's breathing came in sharp gasps as she pressed her back against the cold metal of her crashed ship. The emergency lights flickered weakly, casting strange shadows across the twisted wreckage that had once been her research vessel. Through the cracked viewport, she could see the alien landscape of Kepler 442b, stretching endlessly under its blood-red sky. 3 days had passed since the asteroid storm had torn through her ship's hull, sending her spiraling toward this nightmare world. 3 days of rationing water, fighting off the planet's aggressive wildlife, and watching her communication array spark and die whenever she tried to send a distress signal. The Galactic Research Council had sent her here alone to study the planet's unique mineral formations. Now she wished they had sent an entire fleet. The HFY were hunting her. She had first seen them on the second day. Tall, insectoid creatures with razor-sharp limbs and compound eyes that reflected light like broken glass. They moved in coordinated groups, clicking and chittering in their alien language as they searched through the wreckage of other ships scattered across the barren plains. This wasn't the first time travelers had met their end on this world. Zara clutched her energy rifle tighter, though she knew it only had enough charge for maybe 5 more shots. Her rations would last another day, perhaps 2 if she stretched them. The water recycler was damaged beyond repair, and the nearest water source she had detected was 20 kilometers away, right through HFY territory. A scratching sound outside made her freeze. Slowly she peered through a gap in the hull plating. 3 HFY scouts were approaching her position, their clawed feet leaving deep marks in the rocky ground. Their heads swiveled back and forth, searching for any sign of movement. One of them stopped directly outside her hiding spot and began tapping its claws against the metal in a deliberate pattern. They knew she was here. Zara's heart hammered against her ribs as she checked her rifle's charge level. 4 shots. She would have to make them count. The first HFY had moved to the other side of her shelter, while the second was climbing over the debris pile that blocked the main entrance. The third remained motionless, as if waiting for her to reveal herself. Just as she was about to make her desperate last stand, a new sound cut through the air. A sharp whistle followed by 3 quick clicks. The HFY immediately stopped moving, their heads turned toward the sound, compound eyes glittering with what looked like confusion. The whistle came again, longer this time, and all 3 creatures began backing away from her position. Zara remained perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. After several tense minutes, she heard the HFY's retreating footsteps fade into the distance. Whatever had made that sound, it had scared them off. But what could frighten creatures that had been hunting her for days? She waited until the twin suns had moved noticeably across the sky before carefully emerging from her shelter. The landscape around her ship appeared empty, but she kept her rifle ready as she scanned the horizon. Nothing moved except the occasional dust devil spinning across the plains. Then she saw him. A figure was walking toward her from the direction of a rocky outcropping about half a kilometer away. At first, she thought it might be another survivor from a different crash, but as he got closer, she realized something extraordinary. The figure was human, unmistakably human, but he was walking completely in the open, seemingly unconcerned about the HFY that had been terrorizing her. He was tall and broad-shouldered, wearing what looked like modified military gear that had seen better days. His dark hair was streaked with premature gray, and there was something about the way he moved that reminded her of the veteran soldiers she had met during her academy training. But what was a human doing on this remote planet? And how was he surviving when she could barely last 3 days? As he approached, she noticed he wasn't carrying any visible weapons, yet he moved with the confidence of someone who feared nothing on this hostile world. When he was about 50 meters away, he stopped and raised his right hand in what was clearly a peaceful gesture. "Dr. Zara Chen," he called out, his voice carrying easily across the distance. Xenogeologist from the Terran Research Council, assigned to Mineral Survey Expedition XG-7742. Zara's blood went cold. How did this stranger know her name and mission details? That information was classified at the highest levels. She raised her rifle, though she wasn't sure it would do much good if this man meant her harm. "Who are you?" she shouted back. "How do you know that?" The man smiled, and there was something both sad and reassuring about it. "My name is Marcus Webb, former Terran Defense Force, 15th Reconnaissance Battalion, and I know who you are because I've been waiting for someone like you to arrive." He began walking toward her again, slowly and deliberately. "I know you're scared. I know you've been fighting the Vex High for days with almost no supplies. I know your water recycler is broken and you're down to your last energy cell." He paused when he was about 20 meters away. "But most importantly, I know you want to go home." Zara kept her rifle trained on him, but her hands were beginning to shake. "That's impossible. No one knows I'm here. My communication array is destroyed, and even if it wasn't, this system is too far from any major shipping lanes for anyone to have detected my crash." Marcus nodded slowly. "You're right. No one from the Council knows you're here, but I do because I've been monitoring their deep space survey missions for the last 8 months. Every time they send someone to this planet, the same thing happens. The Vex High hunt them down, and they die alone and afraid, just like the crews of those other ships you've seen scattered around here." He gestured toward the wreckage in the distance. 17 ships in the last 2 years, Dr. Chen. 43 people, all dead. Scientists, explorers, even a few military escorts. The Vex High don't discriminate. Zara's mind raced. If what he was saying was true, then her mission wasn't just a routine survey. It was a death sentence. "Why?" she asked. "Why are they sending people here if they know it's dangerous?" "Because they don't know," Marcus replied. "The Vex High have some kind of jamming technology that prevents distress signals from getting through. Every ship that crashes here just disappears from the records as lost in hyperspace or presumed destroyed by asteroid storms. The Council has no idea this is a hunting ground." He took another step closer, and Zara noticed his eyes. They were the eyes of someone who had seen too much, suffered too much, but hadn't given up hope. "I've been trying to warn people for months, but I can't get off this planet. My ship was destroyed in the same storm that brought me here 15 months ago." 15 months. Zara lowered her rifle slightly. If he had been surviving on this planet for 15 months, he must know things about the Vex High that could help her, but she still didn't understand why he was helping her. "What do you want?" she asked. Marcus stopped walking and looked directly into her eyes. When he spoke, his voice was quiet but filled with absolute determination. "I want to ask you one question, Dr. Chen. One question that will determine whether you live or die, whether you ever see Earth again, whether humanity learns the truth about what's happening on this planet." He paused, and in that moment, Zara felt like the entire universe was holding its breath. "Are you willing to trust a broken old soldier who spent 15 months learning how to kill things that were designed to be unkillable?" The question hung in the air between them like a bridge across an impossible chasm. Zara looked at this stranger who somehow knew everything about her, who had apparently survived alone on a planet that had killed dozens of others, who was offering her hope when she had almost given up. Behind her lay the wreckage of her ship and certain death. Ahead of her stood a man who claimed he could help her survive, but trusting him meant abandoning everything she thought she knew about her situation. The smart thing would be to stay in her shelter, ration her remaining supplies, and hope for a rescue that would never come. But as she looked into Marcus's weathered face, Zara realized that sometimes the smart thing and the right thing were two very different choices. And sometimes when you were stranded on a hostile planet with nowhere else to turn, You had to trust in the one thing that had never let humanity down throughout all their centuries among the stars. You had to trust in each other. Slowly, deliberately, Zara lowered her rifle and took her first step toward Marcus Webb. She didn't know what would happen next, but for the first time in 3 days, she felt like she might actually have a chance to survive this nightmare. The real question was whether survival would be enough, or if this strange human veteran had something far more ambitious in mind. Stranded on a hostile planet. Second document. Marcus led Zara through the rocky terrain with the confidence of someone who had mapped every stone and crevice over months of careful exploration. They moved in silence for the first hour, communicating only through hand signals that he taught her on the go. Stop. Danger. All clear. Hide. The efficiency of their movement amazed Zara. Where she had spent days struggling to travel mere kilometers while avoiding Vex-High patrols, Marcus navigated them safely across distances that should have taken all day. He knew exactly when to pause, when to take cover, and when to move quickly across open ground. "How do you do it?" she finally whispered when they stopped to rest in the shadow of a massive boulder formation. Marcus handed her a water container, actual clean water, not the recycled swill she had been rationing. "The Vex-High aren't as smart as they want you to think. They're efficient hunters, but they follow patterns. Hunt in groups of 3 or 7. Always check the same hiding spots. Never look up." He pointed to the rock walls towering above them. 15 months gives you time to learn their habits." As if to prove his point, the sound of clicking reached their hiding spot. Marcus held up 3 fingers, then pointed east. Exactly 3 Vex-High appeared in the distance, moving in the precise formation he had predicted. They passed within 50 meters of the hiding spot without ever looking toward the vertical surfaces where their quarry waited. "That's not natural behavior," Zara observed. "They're acting like programmed machines, not evolved predators." Marcus nodded approvingly. "Now you're thinking like a scientist instead of just a victim. That insight is going to keep you alive." He gestured for her to follow him up a narrow path that led higher into the rock formation. "Come on. There's something you need to see." They climbed for another 30 minutes until they reached a ledge that overlooked the entire crash site area. From this height, Zara could see the scattered remains of the ships Marcus had mentioned. 17 vessels of various sizes and origins spread across the plains like broken toys. But more importantly, she could see the Vex-High. There were hundreds of them. They moved in perfect geometric patterns across the landscape, forming search grids that covered every possible hiding spot with mechanical precision. Groups would split off to investigate specific areas, then rejoin the larger formation exactly on schedule. It was like watching a vast organic computer running a search algorithm. "They're not just hunting us," Zara breathed. "They're farming us." Exactly. Marcus pulled out a set of binoculars that looked like they had been cobbled together from salvaged ship parts. "Watch the group near your crashed ship." Zara took the binoculars and focused on the area where she had spent the last 3 days. A group of 7 Vex-High was systematically dismantling her vessel, but they weren't just scavenging. They were carefully removing specific components: the communication array, the navigation computer, the emergency beacon, and carrying them toward a structure she hadn't noticed before. "What is that?" she asked, adjusting the focus. In the distance, partially hidden by heat shimmer, stood what looked like a technological installation. It was clearly not human-made, but it wasn't entirely Vex-High either. The architecture seemed to blend organic curves with mechanical precision. "That's what I've been trying to figure out for 15 months, Marcus replied. "Best I can tell, it's some kind of signal processing center. Every time a ship crashes here, the Vex-High strip out the communication equipment and take it there. I think they're learning from our technology." The implications hit Zara like a physical blow. They're not just killing us. They're studying us, learning how to intercept our signals, jam our communications, maybe even impersonate them, Marcus finished. Yeah, that's what I think too, and it gets worse. He pointed to another area visible through the binoculars. See those cleared zones near the installation? Those aren't natural. Something has been testing weapons there, big weapons, the kind that could take out entire fleets if they were deployed strategically. Zara lowered the binoculars and stared at Marcus. You're telling me this isn't just a death trap? It's a research facility. They're using crashed ships and dead crews to develop technology for attacking human space. That's my theory. And if I'm right, then every day we don't warn someone about this place, more people are going to die. Marcus's expression hardened. Not just the ones who crash here. Potentially millions of people when the HFY finally decide they've learned enough to start their real offensive. The weight of the situation settled over Zara like a lead blanket. She had come here expecting to spend a few weeks cataloging mineral deposits and filing routine reports. Instead, she had stumbled into what might be the early stages of an interstellar war. But how do we warn anyone? She asked. You said yourself that we can't get off the planet. Marcus was quiet for a long moment, studying the alien installation through his binoculars. There might be a way, but it's going to require us to do something incredibly stupid. How stupid are we talking about? He lowered the binoculars and turned to face her. We're going to have to get inside that facility and steal one of their communication systems. Use their own technology to punch a signal through their jamming field. Zara stared at him. That's not incredibly stupid. That's completely insane. How many HFY do you think are guarding that place? Based on my observations, at least 200, maybe more. Marcus began repacking his equipment. But here's the thing about the HFY that you haven't figured out yet. They're not adapted for dealing with humans who fight back intelligently. Their whole hunting strategy is based on pursuing frightened, isolated prey who are trying to hide or run away. He started leading her back down the path, but continued talking. Every human who has crashed here has done exactly what you did. Found a place to hide, tried to stretch out their supplies, hoped for rescue. The HFY have adapted to hunt that behavior, but they've never had to deal with humans who go on the offensive. So your plan is to attack them? My plan is to be unpredictable, to do things that their programming isn't designed to handle. Marcus paused at a switchback in the path. During my time with the Defense Force, we fought a campaign against an AI-controlled fleet that had similar behavioral patterns. The key was disrupting their decision trees by presenting them with scenarios they couldn't classify. They reached the bottom of the climb, and Marcus led her toward what looked like a cave entrance hidden behind fallen rocks. This has been my base for the last 15 months. I've got supplies, weapons, and most importantly, intelligence data on HFY operations. The cave turned out to be much larger than it appeared from outside. Marcus had clearly put a lot of work into making it livable, with organized equipment areas, a water collection system, and even a small workshop where he had been modifying salvaged technology. This is incredible, Zara said, looking around at the makeshift laboratory. You've been living like a hermit, but working like a research team. 15 months of nothing to do but observe and plan. Marcus activated a small holographic display that showed a detailed map of the surrounding area. I've cataloged every HFY patrol route, identified their shift patterns, and figured out the schedule for when they transport salvaged materials to the installation. The map showed an intricate web of movement patterns, with timing notations and risk assessments for different routes. It was the work of someone who had combined military training with scientific methodology. Tomorrow night, there's going to be a major transport operation, Marcus continued. They're moving some kind of heavy equipment from the crash site of a military vessel that went down about 6 months ago. Most of the facility guards will be involved in the operation, which gives us our window. Zara studied the map, beginning to understand the scope of what Marcus was proposing. "You want us to infiltrate the installation while they're distracted with the transport?" "Not just infiltrate. We're going to plant enough explosive charges to level the entire complex." Marcus's expression was grim but determined. "Then, in the confusion, we steal one of their communication arrays and use it to broadcast a warning to human space." "And if we get caught?" Marcus was quiet for a moment. "Then we die. But at least we die trying to save millions of other people from sharing our fate." Zara looked around the cave at all the evidence of Marcus's months-long solitary war against an impossible enemy. This man had spent over a year preparing for a mission that would almost certainly kill him, just on the chance that he might be able to warn humanity about a threat they didn't even know existed. It was the kind of desperate, heroic gesture that humans had been making throughout their history, the kind of sacrifice that had allowed their species to spread across the galaxy despite facing dangers that should have wiped them out long ago. "When do we start?" she asked. Marcus smiled for the first time since she had met him. It was the smile of a soldier who had finally found someone willing to stand and fight beside him instead of just waiting to die. "We start now. Because tomorrow night the Vex High are going to learn something they've never had to deal with before." He began pulling weapons and equipment from storage containers around the cave. "They're going to learn what happens when humans stop running and start fighting back." As Zara helped him prepare their gear, she realized that somewhere in the last few hours, her entire mission had changed. She was no longer a stranded scientist hoping for rescue. She had become a soldier in a war that most of humanity didn't even know was happening. And for the first time since her ship had crashed, she felt like she had a real chance of making it home alive. Stranded on a hostile planet. Third document. The twin suns had set hours ago when Marcus and Zara made their final approach to the Vex High installation. They had spent the entire day preparing, with Marcus teaching her everything he had learned about the aliens' technology and behavior patterns. Now, crouched behind a cluster of metallic debris about 200 meters from their target, Zara felt her heart hammering against her ribs. The installation was even more impressive up close. Towering spires of organic-looking metal twisted toward the stars, connected by bridges that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. At the base, massive loading bays showed glimpses of the technology within. Banks of processing equipment, communication arrays that looked like they had been grown rather than built, and workstations where Vex High technicians manipulated human technology with their razor-sharp appendages. "Transport convoy is right on schedule," Marcus whispered, pointing to a line of vehicles approaching from the distant crash site. The Vex High transport craft looked like giant beetles, their carapaces opening to reveal cargo holds filled with salvaged human equipment. "Most of the facility guards are moving to assist with the unloading." Zara watched through Marcus's binoculars as dozens of Vex High emerged from the installation to help with the transport operation. The facility's normal complement of guards had been reduced by at least 70%. It was the window of opportunity they had been waiting for. "Remember the plan," Marcus said, checking his modified weapons one final time. "I create a distraction at the main entrance. You use the service tunnel to get inside and plant the charges at the 3 primary support points. When the explosions start, we meet at Extraction Point Alpha and grab one of their communication arrays from the debris." It was a desperate plan that relied on split-second timing and more than a little luck, but it was their only chance to warn humanity about the threat that was developing on this remote planet. "Marcus," Zara said quietly, "if something goes wrong—" "Nothing's going wrong," he replied firmly. "We've planned this perfectly. You know the layout, you know the timing, and you know how to handle the equipment. Trust in your training and trust in the plan." She nodded, trying to project confidence she didn't entirely feel. "See you at the extraction point." "Count on it." They separated, with Marcus moving toward the main entrance while Zara circled around to the service tunnel they had identified during their reconnaissance. The tunnel was exactly where Marcus had predicted, a narrow maintenance passage that the HFY used to access the installation's power systems. Crawling through the tunnel was like moving through the digestive system of some enormous creature. The walls pulsed with a faint rhythm, and the air was thick with an oily mist that made breathing difficult. But it led exactly where it was supposed to, directly into the heart of the installation. Zara emerged into a vast chamber filled with technology that defied easy description. Human communication equipment had been integrated into organic-looking processing units, creating hybrid systems that seemed to pulse with their own life. Workstations surrounded by pools of glowing liquid showed HFY technicians analyzing human data streams, learning the patterns and protocols of human communication. But the most disturbing sight was a series of cylindrical tanks filled with viscous fluid. Floating inside each tank was a perfect replica of a human head. Dozens of them, representing people from various crashed ships. As Zara watched in horror, she realized the tanks were some kind of biological computer system, using the neural patterns of dead humans to perfect their understanding of human psychology and communication. They weren't just stealing human technology, they were stealing human minds. Fighting down her revulsion, Zara forced herself to focus on the mission. She had explosive charges to plant, and Marcus was counting on her to stay on schedule. The first charge went at the base of the central support column, hidden behind a cluster of processing equipment where it wouldn't be noticed until it was too late. As she worked, she could hear the sounds of the transport operation echoing through the installation. Mechanical voices chittered instructions in the HFY language, while heavy equipment was moved into position. The aliens were clearly excited about whatever they had salvaged from the military vessel. The second charge took longer to place, because she had to disable a security sensor without triggering an alarm. Marcus had taught her the basics of HFY technology during their preparation, but working with the actual systems was far more nerve-wracking than practicing on salvaged components. She was placing the third and final charge when everything went wrong. An explosion outside the installation shook the entire structure, sending Zara sprawling across the floor. That wasn't supposed to happen yet. Marcus's distraction was scheduled to begin after she had planted all the charges and gotten clear of the building. Emergency lights began flashing throughout the chamber as HFY guards rushed toward the disturbance. Zara pressed herself against a support column as dozens of the creatures ran past her hiding spot, their claws clicking against the metal floor in an agitated staccato. Through the transparent walls of the installation, she could see the source of the explosion. Marcus hadn't just created a distraction, he had somehow managed to detonate one of the transport vehicles, sending burning debris across half the facility's loading area. HFY guards were swarming toward the breach in their perimeter, leaving the interior of the installation almost completely undefended. But something was wrong. Marcus should have been retreating to the extraction point by now, not pressing his attack. Unless he wasn't planning to retreat at all. Zara realized with growing horror that Marcus had lied to her about the plan. He wasn't creating a distraction so they could escape together. He was launching a suicide attack to give her the best possible chance of completing the mission alone. The thought filled her with a mixture of rage and admiration. The stubborn, self-sacrificing fool was throwing away his life when they could have escaped together. But he was also giving her an opportunity to do far more damage than they had originally planned. Instead of just stealing a communication array, she could gather intelligence data about the HFY's plans. The facility was virtually undefended, and the aliens would assume that any human infiltrator would be focused on escape rather than further penetration. They would be wrong. Zara activated the timer on the explosive charges. She now had 30 minutes before the installation would be reduced to rubble, and began working her way deeper into the facility. If Marcus was sacrificing himself to give her this chance, she wasn't going to waste it. The intelligence archive was located exactly where Marcus had predicted, in the deepest part of the installation, where the most sensitive information would be stored. As Zara accessed the alien computer systems using interface techniques that Marcus had taught her, she discovered that the situation was even worse than they had imagined. The HFY weren't just preparing to attack human space, they were preparing to replace humanity entirely. The files she downloaded revealed a comprehensive plan for infiltrating human colonies using technology derived from the minds of crashed ship crews. Artificial humans created using the biological templates from the floating tanks. Communication protocols that would allow HFY agents to impersonate human officials. Military strategies designed to exploit every weakness in human defensive systems. And it was almost ready to launch. According to the timeline she found, the first phase of the invasion was scheduled to begin within 6 months. Sleeper agents would infiltrate major human worlds, using their perfect knowledge of human behavior to gain positions of authority. Then, when the signal was given, they would simultaneously disable defensive systems across dozens of star systems, leaving humanity helpless against the main HFY fleet. It was genocidal warfare on a scale that humanity had never faced before, and if Zara hadn't crashed on this planet, if Marcus hadn't spent 15 months gathering intelligence, no one would have known until it was far too late. She copied every file she could access, storing the data on a portable drive that could interface with human computer systems. When the timer on her explosives reached 5 minutes, she finally began making her way toward the exit. The installation was in chaos. Marcus's attack had drawn most of the guards outside, where the sounds of battle continued to rage. Burning transport vehicles cast flickering shadows across the loading bays, and Zara could see bodies, both human and HFY, scattered across the debris field. She found Marcus near the main entrance, bleeding from multiple wounds but still fighting with a determination that bordered on inhuman. He had somehow acquired a HFY weapon, and was using it to hold off a squad of guards who were trying to retake the entrance. "Marcus!" she shouted over the noise of the battle. "The charges are going to blow in 3 minutes." He turned toward her, and she saw that his left arm was hanging useless at his side. "Did you get the communication array?" "Better than that," Zara replied, grabbing one of his modified weapons from where it had fallen. "I got their entire invasion plan, but we need to get out of here now." Together, they fought their way clear of the installation just as Zara's charges detonated. The explosion started deep within the structure and propagated upward, bringing down the towering spires in a cascade of failing metal and organic material. Secondary explosions from stored energy sources lit up the night sky like a miniature sun. The HFY communication array that they needed was in a transport vehicle that had been damaged but not destroyed by Marcus's initial attack. Working together despite his injuries, they managed to activate the system and establish a connection to the nearest human relay station. "This is Dr. Zara Chen, Terran Research Council," she broadcast. "Emergency priority alpha transmission. Xenocide threat confirmed. Repeat. Xenocide threat confirmed. The HFY species on Kepler 442b is preparing to launch a coordinated attack on human space within 6 months. Uploading intelligence data now." As the data streamed across the galaxy toward human space, Zara felt a weight lifting from her shoulders that she hadn't even realized she was carrying. Whatever happened to them now, humanity would be warned. The HFY invasion would not be a surprise attack. "Think they'll believe it?" Marcus asked, leaning heavily against the disabled transport vehicle. "They'll have to," Zara replied. "The evidence is overwhelming." She looked around at the burning remains of the installation. "Besides, I suspect the HFY are going to be too busy dealing with the destruction of their research facility to launch their invasion on schedule." Marcus smiled. And for the first time since she had met him, it was a smile without sadness in it. "So, what happens now?" Zara activated the communication array's emergency beacon. "Now we wait for pickup, and when we get home, we help humanity prepare for a war that's coming whether we're ready or not." as they sat together in the wreckage of their enemy's grand design, watching the alien installation burn against the star-filled sky. Zara realized that Marcus had been wrong about one thing. He had asked her if she was willing to trust a broken old soldier, but Marcus Webb wasn't broken at all. He was exactly what humanity needed. Someone who would never give up, never stop fighting, and never let evil triumph while he still had breath in his body. The Vex High had spent years preparing to destroy humanity by studying their weaknesses. But they had made one crucial mistake in their planning. They had never tried to understand humanity's greatest strength, the willingness of ordinary people to become extraordinary when the survival of their species was at stake. 3 days later, the first ships of the Terran Defense Force arrived at Kepler 442b. They found 2 humans waiting for them with the most important intelligence data in the history of the galaxy and the smoldering ruins of an alien installation that would have been the staging ground for humanity's extinction. The Vex High invasion plans had been reduced to ash and debris. But more importantly, humanity now knew that they were not alone in the galaxy, and they were not as safe as they had believed. The war that followed would test every aspect of human courage and ingenuity. But it would be a war that humanity was ready to fight, thanks to a xenogeologist who refused to give up and a veteran soldier who proved that sometimes the most important battles are fought by people the rest of the galaxy has forgotten about. The galaxy was a dangerous place. But as long as humans like Marcus Webb and Zara Chen were willing to stand against the darkness, humanity would never fight alone.